On this episode of the Airport Economist, we visit Colombia, once ground zero in the illegal drug trade, see how this country is building a new, more positive reputation. Plus, the Australian firm capitalising on Colombia's rich mining sector. Also, the entrepreneur reaching new heights in agribusiness. Could his technology be adopted on Aussie farms? And stories of history, culture and politics are impossible to miss across Bogota. How these colourful streets inspired an Australian backpacker to create his own unique business. Welcome to Bogota, capital of Colombia. I'm Tim Harcourt, the Airport Economist, and I'm going to show you a nation that has thrown off its tragic past to become a real up-and-comer of the region. Colombia suffered from drugs and crime and a civil war, but is now engaged in a peace process and is rebuilding its economy. Colombia is also engaging positively with Asia and the rest of the world. So let's take a closer look behind the headlines and stereotypes to see how Colombia is faring. Colombia is over 1 million square miles of mountainous terrain in the northwest of South America, on the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. Its capital is Bogota, but it also boasts the economic powerhouse Medellin and the Caribbean coastal port of Cartagena. It's made up of 49 million people, more than Argentina, and it boasts a talented, well-educated population with a strong work ethic. Its GDP is $328 billion US dollars. And its GDP per capita is $6,500 US dollars, which means it's still considered to have emerging economy status. Inflation is low at 3.5% and unemployment is 9.5% of the labour force and stubbornly high. Colombia is a member of the Pacific Alliance along with Mexico, Chile and Peru. Its major export partners are the United States, Panama and China. It imports mainly from the US again, China and Mexico. Colombia sees itself as being quite well situated geographically, with Bogota a 5-hour flight from New York, Sao Paulo and Mexico City. The world is now paying attention to the new Colombia. So much so, Australia has opened a new embassy here in Bogota. I sat down with Ambassador Sophie Davies. So you've been in Colombia about 18 months now. What are your impressions compared to your preconceptions before you arrived?
Well, I think what's amazed me is about how resilient Colombia is. You know, they've had a tough past, but they're really getting through that and they want to move on. They see the enormous potential that Colombia's got and they just want to move on to that future.
So what's Colombia's greatest strength?
I would definitely say it's people. Working with Colombians is a dream. They're really well educated, they've got a really high level of work and they work really well together and with us.
So what's Colombia's greatest weakness?
I think it's the perception, actually. I think it's the outside perception that still persists, you know, of the particular issues they've had in the past. Especially the further away you are from Colombia, I think the further those perceptions are a bit entrenched.
So looking at the bilateral relationship, what are the historical ties between Australia and Colombia? What are some of the highlights now?
The historical ties have been there for a long time. We've had a trade office here since 2012. We've had our Australian Federal Police here since 2000. And beyond that, we've had thousands and thousands of students, Colombian students that have come to Australia and Australians who have chosen Colombia as their home. There's 1,200 or so Australians living here, probably more. And I think those historical ties are only getting stronger now that we have a fully fledged embassy here.
What Australian businesses do well here?
We're finding the ones who are coming here, they're our top businesses. I mean, all our businesses are great, but the ones here are really, really well received. We don't have any baggage, and we're seen, as we are, to have excellent standards of work. So any business is doing well here.
What challenges do businesses face?
I think you need to come in here and have a good look. There are quite complicated tax and labour law importation processes that you need to get good advice on. Basically, it's an emerging market, so it's testing the market well. It's deciding which city, because Colombia is very dispersed. It's not like other countries in the region where the capital is where everyone is. Here there are 5 or 6 very big cities, and it's deciding which partners you might choose. So we've seen companies come here, they've bought a partner out and that's how they've established here. Or they've started through a distributor and then they've decided to set up their own office. Or they've come in like Fortescue has and they've set up office straight away based on the potential that they can see here.
So when you think about Colombia, what should people think about now?
Oh, it's an amazing country. I mean, it's one of the most mega diverse countries in the world. It's an OECD member. It's a fantastic place to set up business or to come for tourism or to work or travel or volunteer. I think they should think of it as a country that's almost at the hub. It's there between North America and South America. It's got connections to both parts of the Americas. And as I was saying, I mean, it's got a huge potential for growth and for becoming a powerhouse in the region.
Coming up, meet the Colombian entrepreneur who's creating his own revolution in the mining and agribusiness sectors. Colombia is rebuilding its image and aiming to expand trade and attract foreign investment from Asia, Europe and the rest of the Americas. The agency in charge of all this promotion activity is Pro-Colombia. I met its new CEO, Flavia Santoro. Colombia used to have some country brand issues. How is Colombia changing its global perception?
First of all, I will say that Colombia is ready to move on. Colombia is right now in the best stage of his history, I will say. So we are trying as a government to take advantage of this. What we are doing is trying to promote that the people will come to Colombia. I will see in their first sight what we are having, what we are living, all the opportunities that we are bringing to the private sector, to the investors, for tourism, and for the whole world to see that Colombia is ready to move on.
So looking west, how does Colombia view Australia and the rest of Asia?
Colombia sees Australia as a wonderful and a big opportunity. We will think that with the Pacific Alliance, we are waiting for this opportunity to become true. And let's hope that it will happen in the next years, because we see a great opportunity for trade, for investors, and to bring also tourism and to send tourism to Australia. So I think that in sense of Australia, we are ready. But also in Asia, we see that is a humongous opportunity, and we are willing also to work with the whole Asia world to come to Colombia, to learn more about our economy, to learn more about the opportunities in investment that they can have here.
So what does Pro-Colombia do, and how do you attract foreign investment?
What Pro-Colombia does is we have a legacy, and we have the president has asked us to be the best ally for the world, investors for the world, that is coming for tourism and for trade, for commercial trade. So what we are doing is that we are promoting a great country. We are promoting a great brand that is Colombia. And with that great brand, what we are trying is to attract the best investors for the best projects here in Colombia. We're trying to attract the best visitors to come to our country and be delighted to have the experience of living Colombian landscapes, to live in Colombia, coffee, to live in all the good things that Colombia can show to the world.
Do you provide any specific services to Colombian companies?
Oh yes, we think that the Colombian companies are heroes, that they are the ones that really make the hard work for us to have the best economic results. So we always are there for them. We work as a consultant. We always try to give them the best information, but we also go with them to the whole world in the events and the different things that we promote in the world, so they can show their best products, they can have their best partners. So Pro-Colombia is always a great ally for the companies.
So I might welcome you to Sydney soon to open up the first Pro-Colombia office.
I hope that it will be part of my legacy. So let's see that that can happen.
Colombia is the main producer of the world's emeralds and is also known for gold, silver and coal reserves. In fact, mining could become the country's economic growth engine, with foreign investment growing year on year. Australian executive recruitment firm Swan Global has set up shop here, specialising in job placement in the natural resources and industrial sectors. So tell us about Swan Global. What does it do and what's its mission?
Swan is an executive search company with a deep relationship in the mining sector. We work for some of the top mining firms around the world, as well as mid-tier, and also the companies that are setting up in the region. We often are called on to search and select general managers for companies that are opening in market.
Colombia's been behind the times in terms of mining health and safety. Have Australian companies improved those standards?
Yes. So there have been natural disasters or man-made disasters caused by the informal mining that's occurred in the country. And they are in need of advice on how to preempt these disasters from occurring, both an opportunity for hardware and software and advice is needed at a high level as well as a provincial level. So there's an opportunity there for Australian best practice to be exported to Colombia. Doing business in Colombia is relatively easy. On comparison, Colombia is ranked third by the World Bank behind Peru as a Latin American country whereby the regulations are attractive enough to enable a company to set up and do business within that jurisdiction. But you do need to spend time getting to know the people of Colombia and what would inspire them to want to do business with you.
What are the risks and rewards of doing business in Colombia?
Well, let me tell you, Tim, the risk is not being there. You really need to be in Colombia. When you're serious about converting business, you really need to be in market. As far as the rewards, the Colombian economy has been growing 5% average in the last 4 years. So the ability to introduce new technology, new standard, new systems will be well rewarded by companies that are growing in the Colombian economy.
Still to come, how Bogota's street art scene inspired one Australian to start his own business. Agriculture has historically been one of the main engines of this economy. And the world has started to take closer attention to Colombian farmers who do things a little bit differently. A local entrepreneur has built drones to monitor crops just like this one. So a job that used to take a matter of weeks now takes a matter of hours. So tell us about this area. It was actually once controlled by FARC, wasn't it?
They suffer the violence for years, for nearly 50 years. They just growing a new generation with different expectations, and they understood that legal activities or industrialized agriculture could lead them on a different situation. They invest on their crops, they're investing on education, and they're investing on technology. We are in this town especially because we want to support the agriculture with technology.
So on this farm in particular, how is your drone technology streamlining operations?
From last year, we started developing a biocontrol or a pest control with insects. And we're doing this in Colombia because we've been really lack of labor and it's really hard to get into these crops. You will see, Tim, it's very high and dense. So it's really hard to step in. So we're using the drones to deliver these little bags so they could control the pests. It's quicker, it's cheaper, it's efficient.
Now, your business is based here. Tell us how you started your business.
Well, Anka started actually in Australia. We were international students in Melbourne, thinking on how to come back and probably have a contribution for the economy. So we started exploring technologies that we found on drones a big potential.
Are there any other industries or sectors that are watching this drone space closely?
Yes, they are. Drones are pretty much on any field. You see on the news, you see on the forest, on the fire controls, you see on minery, oil and gas. Everything that is being done on open fields now has a drone attached to it.
Is it easy to start a business in Colombia?
Tim, from my experience, I think it's not easy anywhere on the world. Well, talking about the paperwork or the legal work, it's harder than Australia. But a startup business is more than that. It's not just paper. It's having the goals, it's having the energy, it's putting all your efforts, your savings, and everything to complete a dream. So it hasn't been easy, really. So we've been in the market for 4 years, but nearly the first 2 years was really hard, especially because no one didn't know what a drone was capable of. So everything is a challenge, and as you grow up as a business, you start facing more challenges. And this is nice. I mean, this is the nice part of being on the business side rather than on unemployment. You could always challenge you more and more to face new markets or new targets.
Coming up, what's the easiest way for a business traveller to get here? We'll talk to LATAM Airlines. There's no doubt Australians love their coffee, and we're not the only ones. More than 2 billion cups are consumed around the world each day. A lot of it's produced here in Colombia. The Arabica bean is considered to be of the finest variety, so that means big business in terms of exporting. Your coffee's very smooth and well balanced. What things do you need to consider?
We believe in having a very, very normal coffee for normal people. So we don't have very high acidities or very low bodies now. We have, most of our coffees are medium body, medium acidity, medium everything, but one main thing, sweet. Consumers like sweetness in their mouth, basic consumers, not very sophisticated ones. And we aim to that target market. So that's basically our coffee, a very normal coffee, but sweet.
In what regions of Colombia is your coffee grown?
We are located in a place called Santander. Santander is a state where the capital is Bucaramanga, and that's about 250 miles north from Bogota towards the Venezuelan border.
Where do you see most demand in terms of high-quality coffee for export?
Demand is basically today in worldwide consuming coffees, because the segmentation between specialty and commodity is deepening every time. So the specialty coffee is gaining more and more demand in the market. Basically, in Australia is one of the main countries, Japan, US, and Europe.
Do Australia's quarantine laws make it a challenge to do business?
No, I think those things are important because you have to segment the offerings inside the coffee with very high standards. And we like higher standards to be able to sustain the specialty coffee in the future.
So what's Colombia's coffee culture like?
Well, Colombia is not a coffee culture country. We still have a long way to go. In fact, right now, ProColombia and other government officers are very worried about how we can improve to consume higher quality coffees in Colombia, and that's taking place right now. So hopefully in 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to catch up a little bit to where Australia is today.
Still to come, if you're thinking of doing business here in Colombia, it's important to know how it's done. Stay with us and we'll find out. Bogota has some of the most colourful streets in the world, thanks to its unique and prolific art scene. When an Aussie backpacker arrived here in 2011, he was inspired to share these streets with the world. That marked the beginning of the Bogota Graffiti Tour, now considered one of the best things to do when visiting the capital.
99% of the artists we're going to see today on the tour are basically self-taught artists. At the beginning of the tour, we're going to be in the downtown area of the city, and then we're going to be finishing up the tour at the oldest part of the city, the Candelaria.
So the Bogota Graffiti Tour has been voted #1 walking tour on TripAdvisor. What was the inspiration for it?
For me personally, Bogota is one of the best cities in the world for graffiti and street art in general. It's the sheer quantity and quality of street art there. It's a combination of several things. One, it's the aesthetic thing. So you've got the mountains, you've got the Caribbean coast, the Pacific coast, the Amazon. So you've got beautiful fauna and flora. Also, there's a lot of socio-political things that are going on. You know, there was a civil war that was going on for a long time, the recent peace process, the war on drugs, etc. So it makes it a potent mix for the street art scene, and you'll see a lot of these issues on the walls.
So how big is Bogota's street art scene?
I would say the local graffiti art and street art scene is huge. I'd put it in comparison with New York, LA, London, Melbourne. It's up there. It's international mecca as far as I'm concerned.
Because some of the tourism laws that we have here in the city, we have to have a certified guide from the city accompanying us in all of our tours. So she's here making sure we're practicing responsible tourism. And for me, tourism is really important because it finally gives you guys a chance to see what Colombia is really all about.
So when it comes to setting up business in Colombia, Did you face any challenges as an Australian?
There's a language thing, so knowing Spanish can help. I'm not the best at Spanish, but I was still able to manage. There's some bureaucratic tape that you have to get through. But generally speaking, I think if you're motivated and you've got a good team around you, you can succeed.
So how did you overcome these challenges?
There are challenges in terms of competition. Sometimes the competition can be a bit unfair. We've had some experiences where other guides or tour companies have sort of copied us completely, turned up to where we meet our clients and pretended that they're us. So you have to sort of get around those things. But I think if you're consistent and legitimate and people see that you're the original tour and you're doing a good job, not only for the clients, but we sort of pride ourselves that we're giving something back to the local scene. Part of our profits go back to financing projects, painting murals in sort of impoverished areas of the city.
So what advice would you have for another Australian business setting up in Colombia?
I'd say that you have to have an open mind. You have to have a certain degree of tolerance. But as long as you're positive and motivated, you can succeed. I've got several expat Australian friends over there who've created businesses that are doing very well.
So is your heart Colombian or Australian?
I am an Aussie Colombian. Yeah, so my wife's Colombian. My first daughter was born in Colombia. My second daughter was born in Australia. We speak Spanish and English at home. So it's a mix. My wife loves Australia, but her heart is in Colombia as well. So we go back and forth.
So what's the easiest way to get here and do business and experience Colombia's colourful way of life? Let's go and ask LATAM Airlines. So what's the best way to get to Colombia from Australia?
With LATAM, once you've reached Santiago, you can get to Bogota. We have 2 daily flights to Bogota, and we also serve Cartagena from Lima. But then once you reach Bogota, also there's a complete network of LATAM flights to serve whatever destination you want to reach within Colombia.
Colombia is pretty decentralised with Bogota, Medellin, Cartagena. Does LATAM have a good domestic network?
We have a very big domestic network. As you're saying, we can take you to all of those destinations basically in Bogota.
Colombia's had a bit of an image problem in the past. Are there any safety concerns?
I have never had a bad experience in Colombia. I can say that especially the corporate district in Bogota is very safe and it's very beautiful. I can say that Bogota has been flourishing for the last 5 to 7 years.
Starting or expanding a business in Colombia is an attractive option in Latin America. But it's important to understand how business is done. Let's go ask the Grand Hyatt. So what are the business customs in Colombia?
You have to remember you're in Latin America and really that transpires in the customs here. There are a couple of interesting things. Firstly, because of traffic in Bogota, there's a lot of traffic. It's kind of normal and acceptable for people to arrive late at a meeting. So you cannot get upset. That's the way it is. 15 to 20 minutes is the acceptable norm here in Bogota. Then when you get to meet someone, before you talk business, you have to spend 10, 15 minutes talking about the family, the weather, how things are, and small talk, right? And then finally, and again, I think this is to do with being in Latin America. In many countries, you would shake hands or you would bow. But here in Latin America and Colombia, it's very normal and expected that even if you're meeting someone for the first time, that you kiss the person, right? So it's 2 kisses, 2 kisses, 2 kisses, and you shake hands with a gentleman.
So it's very relationship-driven rather than transactional.
Yes, correct. It's you need to know. You need to establish a relationship before you feel comfortable doing any business. So you need to know the person and feel comfortable that you can really put your trust into that person.
Do you take clients out for lunch or for dinner?
There's no particular norm, so it depends on the schedule and what's convenient, so both are acceptable. If you're doing lunch, it's very normal and expected to enjoy some alcoholic drinks at lunch as well. Yeah.
So it's a liquid lunch.
It is a liquid lunch, indeed. Yeah.
And is it a long lunch like in Brazil?
It is. Lunch here, it's quite interesting. You go at 12 o'clock to a restaurant and you'll see no one almost until 1:45. So a good time to set up, to schedule lunch is 1 o'clock, and lunch can easily go until 2:30, 3 p.m.
And who pays?
If you're inviting someone or if you're the one seeking business, I guess a person who is seeking the business or the most senior or the one really trying to do the business, it's the one who should be inviting the other party for lunch.
So how much Spanish is expected as a foreign business person in Colombia?
A little bit of Spanish, it's always helpful in Colombia, Bogotá. But if you have a good or a decent level of Spanish, that will certainly help to create a better connection and to do better business.
Like many business travellers, I was once worried about going to Colombia, but the reality couldn't be more different than the perception. The main cities I visited in Colombia, Bogotá, Medellin and Cartagena, were sophisticated, well-managed and a pleasure to travel around. The Colombian population is young, and at the top levels of government and business, they are eager to impress the outside world. That is not to say there are still dangers, particularly in the countryside, but full marks to Colombians for rebuilding their country in form and in substance. So what do we learn from our visit to Colombia? Don't let Colombia's past ruin your present. Enjoy the country as they want foreigners to visit. Do take precautions though. Use diplomatic services. For instance, Australians should meet Ambassador Sophie Davies in the new Australian Embassy in Bogotá and her fine team of expat and local embassy staff. As well as Bogotá, try the wonderful city of Medellin or Cartagena on the Caribbean coast. Colombia is a land of great contrasts. Spell it right, it's Colombia with an O, not Colombia. Young Colombians have taken to social media to correct this often made mistake. Well, that's it for the Colombia edition of the Airport Economist. See you on our next business adventure together somewhere around the great globe. I'm Tim Harcourt and I'm the Airport Economist.